All right, let's dive straight into the ultimate breakdown of how the foundational documents of the Indian Republic actually came together. For this explainer, my goal is to give you a complete notes explanation without missing anything. We're going to trace the creation of the world's longest constitution from absolute start to finish.
Here is our roadmap for today. 1. The rule of law. 2. Demand and assembly formation. 3. The guiding objectives. 4. Drafting and dual roles. 5. Enactment versus enforcement. And 6. Critiques and final structure.
Section 1. The rule of law. So before we get bogged down in dates and committees, we have to answer the most basic question, right? Why do we even need this document? Well, imagine you've got a big brother who constantly bullies you at home, stealing your TV time and your food just because he can. You'd probably run to your parents and beg for a strict set of rules pinned right to the fridge to stop the tyranny, wouldn't you? That is exactly what a constitution does. It establishes the rule of law. Honestly, it's arguably humanity's greatest invention to prevent exploitation and enforce accountability. It guarantees that absolutely no one is above the law, and that actions actually have consequences. It's what transforms us from a chaotic group of people into a functioning, civilized society. Moving on to Section 2, Demand and Assembly Formation. Getting this assembly together was a seriously long uphill battle. It kicked off with communist thinker M.N. Roy making the demand in 1934 and then evolved through official pushes by the Congress. Along the way, there were a bunch of surviving half measures from the British during World War II, things like the August Offer and the Cripps Mission. But it wasn't until the Cabinet Mission in 1946 that the assembly was finally officially formed. And the math behind this original assembly was incredibly precise. They allocated 389 seats, which worked out to roughly 1 seat for every 1 million people. These seats were then carefully divided among Muslim, Sikh, and general populations across 292 British provinces, 93 princely states, and 4 chief commissioner provinces.
However, that math changed dramatically. You see, after the Muslim League boycotted the assembly and partition became a harsh reality, the total number of seats dropped from 389 down to 299. Obviously, the numbers across the provinces and princely states dropped too, as representatives for what would soon become Pakistan left the body.
Section 3. The Guiding Objectives. Once everyone was finally seated, this grand new assembly really needed a philosophical compass. So, on December 13, 1946, Jawaharlal Nehru moved the historic Objectives Resolution. This was huge. It laid the ideological foundation for the entire document, setting the tone with a firm, solemn resolve to build an independent sovereign republic. These core principles envisioned a true union of India where all power is derived directly from the people. It promised justice, equality, and robust safeguards for minorities and oppressed classes. Unanimously adopted in January 1947, these exact principles eventually transformed into the famous preamble we all know today. Section 4. Drafting and Dual Roles. Following the Indian Independence Act of 1947, the Assembly broke completely free of any remaining British oversight. It became a fully sovereign body, but with an unprecedented dual workload. Seriously, the exact same members were wearing 2 completely different hats. One day, they're drafting the nation's future as the Constituents Assembly under Dr. Rajendra Prasad. The very next day, they'd sit as a provisional legislative body passing everyday ordinary laws to keep the country running under G.V. Mavalankar. When we look at the actual drafting, we absolutely have to talk about Sir B.N. Rao. He was the brilliant constitutional advisor, a former Imperial Civil Service officer and International Court of Justice judge. He literally traveled the globe consulting legal experts everywhere to prepare the initial framework of the Constitution. The scale of his global research was just staggering. And then leading the charge was, of course, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. As the chief architect and chairman of the drafting committee, he and his team took that initial framework and painstakingly refined the incredibly complex text over 140 days of intense, focused work. Section 5. Enactment versus Enforcement. This draft didn't just get a quick rubber stamp. It underwent 3 grueling readings over a period of 2 years, 11 months, and 18 days. The second reading alone took nearly a year, mainly because Dr. Ambedkar had to stand on the floor and defend the document literally clause by clause to the entire assembly. Now, here is a really important distinction.
The document was officially enacted on November 26, 1949, and urgent provisions like citizenship and elections were applied right away. But they intentionally waited 2 full months for complete enforcement. They chose January 26, 1950, specifically to honor the 20th anniversary of the 1930 Puna Swaraj, or Complete Independence Declaration.
Finally, Section 6, Critiques and Final Structure. Critics at the time argued the assembly wasn't truly representative or sovereign, claiming it was just an elite club of Congress politicians and lawyers. But in reality, it accommodated all religious communities, included key female leaders, and assumed absolute sovereignty the moment the 1947 Independence Act passed. Here's a wild fact for you. The original debates and the working document were entirely in English. Believe it or not, an authoritative, officially mandated translation of the Constitution in Hindi wasn't added until the 58th Amendment. That was all the way in 1987.
By the way, if you're keeping detailed notes and ever need to remember the 12 schedules of the Constitution, there's a brilliant mnemonic for it, Tiers of Old PM. It neatly maps out everything from territories and emoluments right down to panchayats and municipalities. It is a fantastic little hack to mentally organize the final structure of the document. So it leaves us with this incredibly provocative thought. How did just 299 individuals, operating in the absolute turmoil of the 1940s, draft a rule of law so perfect and so resilient that it continues to flawlessly hold together the world's largest, most diverse democracy today? It really is a masterclass in foresight and statecraft. Thanks for exploring this amazing piece of history with me, and keep digging into the why behind the facts.